Welcome to Creator Toolbox. We've got a great show for you today. This is a continuation from the last episode, so if you are watching this live, thank you very much. If you're watching it later and it's been recorded, I invite you to go back and look at part one. Not necessary, but a good intro. Let's get on with our introductions. Andrew, go ahead.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm Andrew Barnes, developer advocate here at ServiceNow, and I specialize in managing large-scale development deployment, among other things on the platform, which is why today is so exciting. And Brad.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brad Tilton. I've been developing on the platform for a while now, and I'm excited about today's show. Managing large-scale deployments is not one of my specialties, so I'm looking to learn some things.
And my name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Advocate at ServiceNow. Been here since 2010, customer for a couple of years before that, and a history that goes back to the, I forget if it was the Devonian or the Mesozoic era, but it was one of those Stone Age times. And this is a topic that we get a lot from our customers, especially our large enterprise customers that have lots of developers and they're looking to manage their applications and their deployments. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
All right. So as Chuck said, last week we did part one of this, which was covering update sets and how to raise your maturity level with using update sets in ServiceNow to manage your development. But there are other options, and we're going to explore those today. So we're going to look at both the application repository and source control as options for how to manage your development and move your development between instances and control things like branching for your development segregation between developers and features. So with that, are there any questions from either of you before we dive into the screen share?
You want to save announcements to the end?
We should do announcements right now.
Okay. Well, you're the man with the hackathon news, so let's talk about the hackathon first.
I've got the first one, yes. So the annual hackathon for knowledge is coming up here in 11 days from now. So it's going to be start on May 8th and go for 24 hours. And you can go to register at the knowledge site. So you register for knowledge, and then you can go search for the hackathon and register there for the hackathon. And then you'll receive information on how to create a team. And you can either create or join a team and come and join in our hackathon. There are some cool prizes, and this team will be participating. So we'll be building stuff live on stream as well during the hackathon. We just won't get to win any of the prizes, but we're actually going to use the app afterwards. So that's our prize, is no one will bother us while we're building this app on the stream. So come join us for the hackathon. I'll make sure that we have the link to that in the description here, and really looking forward to that.
And as Andrew alluded to, we've got knowledge coming up May 11, 12, 13, and then the following week, 18, 19, 20. So 2 weeks of groups of 3 days. Knowledge.servicenow.com is where you want to go for that. The developer content, a lot of that's going to be contained in the creator console. Look for those sessions that start with CC, or the labs that are CCL, and just lots of great stuff. Keynote is KEY 4004. You know you've done this too much when you've got the session IDs memorized. Look for the keynote. There's all kinds of great stuff. Brad, did you release the blog article yet or not?
We do have a blog article coming out today. I just checked; it's not released yet. Okay. That's going to list out, what you need to know before you go to CreatorCon, and we've got lots of different sessions, fun sessions, all sorts of things, and those are kind of listed out in the blog post. So check the developer blog today, and you'll have a lot of information in there.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the 27th. Don't we have a newsletter coming out today too?
We do have a newsletter coming out later this evening and tomorrow, depending on what your geo is.
Watch your mailboxes for that. There's going to be a lot of good stuff in there too.
Yeah, we do have some fun sessions for knowledge, especially
We do.
some of the ones well, at least we think the ones we're doing is fun.
Ask me after knowledge how fun it was.
So let me go ahead and transition us into a screen share.
All right.
So I will start sharing my screen now. So we are going to hurdle through some of these things today because we've got a lot we want to cover. Please ask questions in the chat if you have a particular question that we don't dive into directly. So I've got 3 instances set up here. They're all in the same company, so to speak. So they share an application repository. And if you don't know what the ServiceNow application repository is, it's a place in ServiceNow to store your applications versions that are ready to be moved between instances. So it's kind of like source control, but without the extra features of something like Git. So it doesn't have branching, for example. So it's not for development storage. It's for storing potentially publishable versions of your apps. So speaking of source control, let's dive right in and import an app from source control. So I'm going to import from source control. So I am in this instance here, and I'm going to come over to GitHub. I've got an application in GitHub that I'm going to load into this instance because I need to do some development against it. You'll need credentials. So one thing to note here is to interact with any source control based repository in ServiceNow as of Paris, I think it is, you need to have read-write access. So you'll need a credential record and you'll need read-write access. So you can't, for example, just pull down a public repository that you only have read access to. You'll need to fork that repository. So if you were on a public repository that you only had read access to, you click this little fork button there. That will create your very own copy of that as it exists right then. And then you'll have read and write access to that. So with that, let's go ahead and get this importing. Did I already do it? That's possible. Well, let's grab a different one then. It's possible I may have already imported this one. So let's go grab a different one. Oh, how about the LinkedIn spoke? That's a good one. Let's grab this one. LinkedIn spoke, import. So the very first time you do this, so I was in Studio and I did import from source control. This is importing this application, fully from scratch here. So now I'll be able to select that application, the LinkedIn spoke, and I will have all of the contents of this application loaded in Studio for me to be able to manipulate it. I believe that, yes, that one was just a shell, but we can switch over to the one that we wanted to see, which was Slack points thing, which I apparently imported about 30 minutes ago, making sure everything was working. So I have this full application loaded, and I can, so anything in Studio can be stored to source control. So you say, oh, well, how do I get my application into source control? And so if you already have an existing application, the way you link it to source control is in Studio, you select that application and you click the source control tab, and then you're going to use this link to source control option. And so that will need to be an empty repository in which you're going to then store this application in source control. The next thing that I want to look at here is I'm a developer and I'm ready to do some development on this application. So what do you think, having watched last week how I did that process for update sets, where do you think I would do that sort of similar thing here, Brad or Chuck? What do you think I should do if I'm going to start doing development in a source controlled link application?
I'd either create a new, you're talking about just making a change?
Yeah, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to go
Okay.
work on a story.
Okay. You've either got your navigator down the left-hand side to pick one of the files that you want to work on, a business rule, an ACL, script include, whatever, or you could create a new one.
Absolutely. But there's a step before that that I actually want to do when I'm going to work on a new feature for a story, which is
I'm going to create a
I'm
branch.
going to
create a branch or a tag. Yeah.
So I'm going to create a branch, and I'm going to name my branch based the same way I did for my update sets. So we have a pattern that we're using in our development team. And so I'm going to name this story 4001, and the name, which is Fix the Cake. So we're going to create a branch, and I need to not have spaces in there. Nice. So now I have a branch that I can work in for my feature, for my story. And if another developer is working on this application, they can have their own branch that they're working in. Now, one caveat with that is in any individual ServiceNow instance, only one branch of an application can be active at a time. But I could be in two different development instances. Like here, I'm in a different instance working on the same application, and I can be on a different story. And we want 4003, which is make the pie. So I can be working on different branches in different instances of ServiceNow. Or if we're not working on the same thing, the same application and same story at the same time, we can time slice that instance. So even here, where I was currently working on make the pie branch, the developer working on the other story can come over here and say switch branch and switch over to fix the cake. And so what this is going to do is do a delta compare between the current branch I'm on and this other branch, and just change the application files that are needed to do that. So let's take a look and watch that in action, right? So we are now in the fix the cake. So let's fix the cake. So update user points, business rule. Let's take a look at that, make an update to it, and then switch a branch and see what happened. Come on. And, we're just going to throw in a log here.
You're braver than me. I'd just put in a comment.
All right. So we have made an update in this instance to this business rule on our fix the cake branch, but we will need to either commit this to source control or stash it if we want to switch our branches. So let's see both of those options. So if we say switch branch, it's going to prompt me to say, oh, well, you have some uncommitted changes here. And would you like to discard those? Would you like to stash them, or would you like to cancel and go and commit them? So we're going to, stash the cake is best comment. And we're going to switch to the make the pie. And then what it's going to do is it will actually prompt me. So it's going to do that Delta compare. It's going to load those application files as they exist in our new target branch, make the pie. And then I have the option to apply our stash back here or not. It's up to me. But if we take a look at that business rule, update the user points, we'll see that it no longer contains that comment.
I thought it asked automatically, what would you like to do with the stash changes?
I agree with you, Chuck.
I was kind of surprised not to see that there.
Prior to Quebec, it did automatically prompt you. So I think that's a new change.
Or it could be, you know, where I've seen that is we're being not following best practices on our dev program site. But when we pull changes from dev program dev into prod, sometimes we have like a sys template record that's been modified in prod. And it says, hey, wait a minute, you want to stash this? And I say, yeah, pull all the stuff from dev, brings it in. And then when it applies, it says, what do you want to do with the stash changes? Well, I don't want to lose those templates, so I apply them back. It might be conditional, and I don't know exactly what those conditions are.
So I have applied that stash change now. And so our business rule should have our comment, and it's time to commit that change. So here we are, cake is the best. So let us commit our changes. So this is going to give me a prompt for what do you want to commit? And if you have multiple users, you will see multiple users here in the left, and you can cherry pick exactly which updates you want to be committed at this time. We only have one, so it's really easy. But in general, you know, especially in a large team, you're going to have multiple people's work here. And you only want to commit the stuff that actually should be committed for what you're trying to do. So we will commit this, adding comment to update user points because story set to. So we're going to commit those changes, and then we can go visit GitHub and take a look at Slack points thing. And we'll see that the branch, make the pie, had a commit less than a minute ago. And we're currently looking at the master branch or the main branch. We can actually, so let's assume that I'm now done with that development and I'm ready to, merge this into the main branch because it's ready to be, merged into main and promoted all the way up the stack. So I can, follow the prompt there, which says, hey, let's merge these changes. And I'll review this. Typically, you would have a developer who's not you managing the decision to merge something in. But for simplicity's sake today, I will be, playing multiple roles. So we will create this pull request. And now we will say no conflicts. So let us open. Yes.
You need to throw a comment in there?
I'm on the wrong. I ended up on
You're on Josh's somehow.
the wrong repository.
Poor Josh, he's going to get a pull request notification.
Yeah, this one. Did I create those branches in Josh's?
Uh-oh. You'll know if you go
No.
to the instance and check your...
Yeah, let's go see what
Source
the
control
instance
config.
says my source repository is.
Because at the bottom right, it tells you the branch.
Ah, that's why. I went to my personal one and not the org one.
Okay.
Here we go. This one. All right. Now we should have our branches. Yes. Sorry. We have a lot of versions of this repository floating around, and I have access to a lot of them.
It's more real life demo that way.
Yeah, it is definitely a more real life situation. So we just take a look at the make the pie, which should have our comment. Yes, 3 minutes. Our commit is here from 3 minutes ago. Excellent. And let us. So we can take a look at this and see there'll be a lot of noise. And one of these in here will be the actual, like, right here. This is the thing that actually changed. So I could merge this into my main branch. I'm not going to do that just for simplicity's sake, since we already did it once and we did not. I got off track. So let us return to our instance. And so that was creating a branch, switching between branches, stashing something, and applying from a stash. And those are pretty much the main things that you'll be doing with source control. The next thing that I wanted to show in Studio is let us proceed to this instance. We're going to create a new application. So you might say, oh, well, I don't use Studio because I've got all these global apps. And I say, well, you can handle that in Studio as well. And so we are going to make the Creator Toolbox global shell, global bundle. There we go. So if you don't have this global option, there's a system property that allows you to enable that. I don't remember the name of it, but just knowing that this is controlled by a system property will probably get you the right Google search to find that.
Somebody type it into chat and you'll get a gold
Yeah,
star.
somebody type it in the chat.
I'm waiting for Mark to pull out the property again. He did that for us last time.
So I have created a global bundle for a Creator Toolbox. And what I can do now is I can add application files into this global bundle from the global scope. So if we want to add existing files, I will come over here. I want to add some business rules from our incident table. So let us narrow down to incidents. And we want to do, caller close, incident auto close, and one more. So
Mark
I'm
to the
going
rescue with the property.
Thank you, Mark. So you've got some options here. One of them is if you already have an update set that you have been using to manage some global files, you can load that here and it will show you all of the application files there. And then you can pick from those to add them. We're going to use a name search today to find our incident table business rules. I probably should have gotten more specific than close.
That update set is really powerful because you can, if you're doing some development, you've got it, you've already got it all contained in an update set, and you decide, let's do this through source control in the app repo. You can pretty easily just import all that into a bundle.
Absolutely, Brad. So that's a really powerful feature for folks that are already, using update sets and want to transition to using these global application bundles. That really helps accelerate this because it will load all of those application files that you want for you relatively fast. So now I have created this bundle that has these 3 business rules in it. And you can add, any application file that normally goes into Studio can go in here with that add file. So we've got these 3 business rules in this bundle, and we can do the same thing that we just did with source control for this. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new application repo for source control. And we're going to do it in my repository. We're going to call this CTB example bundle. Example global bundle. All right. And let's make this a private repository. It doesn't have to be GitHub, but that's what I'm using today. So I'm going to return to my instance. I've got this global bundle. And if you recall, I said, if you want to link an existing app, how you do it is you go to source control, link to source control, give it the URL. We're going to give it a branch. So we're going to call it the main branch to be our starter one. We're going to provide our credential, and then we're going to say link to source control. And our expectation now is that what happens here is we don't have an empty repository anymore once we switch to our main branch. And you'll see we've got our properties file, and then we have our, this is our bundled scope sysid. So there's our sys app. And then under update will be our 3 business rules. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Does.
All right. So, and we can apply all of the same logic here. We can, create branches. We can do merging. So all of those wonderful get features are available to us here with source control. Now, that's a bunch of stuff about source control. What about the application repository? So let's go take a look at the application repository real quick. So if you type my company applications in the main ServiceNow window, you will see this application manager interface. And you'll be able to see which apps are in development, which apps are not installed, and which apps are installed. And we're in our dev instance, so all of the ones we have are in dev. They're in development. So that will include the app we just created, CTB Global Bundle, right here. And you can open Studio from here. Brad's got a squint. Do you have a question?
That Creator Con workshop, I think that's an old workshop of mine. That number looks familiar. It's not. It's not
last
relevant.
year's. It's got to be last year's because last year was CCW. All these are the CCL this year.
Yeah,
it's not this year's. I think it's from a couple
1856
of years
is mine
ago.
from last
It's
year.
yours. Oh, okay. That's why it's familiar.
Last modified March 25th, 2020.
That's why it's familiar.
Yes, it is familiar from last year. So CTB Global Bundle. So we can open this up and see, the regular application interface here and see what version it is. And, if we come down here, application files, what we expect to see, 3 business rules. Yes, there we are. So this is our global application bundle. And so what does this give us? It gives us the ability, one, to use Studio to manage these files. it adds the ability to use source control. And then it also adds the ability to use to the application repository. So I can use this interface to do that. So I can click this publish to my application repository. Or if I'm in Studio, I can do the same. So I can go to File, Publish, and I can give it a new version.
We don't need dev notes.
We don't need dev notes. So the first thing it did is if you're linked to source control, it will commit the app to source control. And then
Always.
it will publish to the application repository. So you might have missed that in the screens, but the first thing it did was perform a commit to the linked source control repository if you have one.
I forgot, does it make a tag also?
It does make a tag as well. So we should be able to see over here.
Yep.
We just made a new commit, and we also should have a new tag for.
But it doesn't make a branch.
It does not make a branch, no.
Okay.
But we did get a tag and a commit.
And if you wish, later you can make a branch from a tag.
Absolutely. So that is now published to our application repository. And what can we do with that? We can go to one of our other instances and load our My Company applications. And we'll see that there are, let's see, no apps here. So let's give it a refresh.
Where'd it go?
I think my Chrome just decided it was done with me. Yeah.
Show's not over. Don't leave.
Chrome just decided it was done with me.
Chrome's on a smoker break.
Let's restore those.
Live
We
stream.
do have a question. We do have a question about the merits of the app repo versus Git as a deployment mechanism.
Excellent. So that's a really good question. And let's go through the strengths and weaknesses by doing that. So one thing that we can see right off the bat is in our application manager, in our test instance, we can now see and have access to our CTB global bundle, and we can install it here. Another option, since we were using source control, is we can install it from source control. Now, those will install in two different ways. So since the app has never been loaded here, they'll be roughly the same. But if the app has been loaded, they'll be slightly different on how they install. So let's install this one. Let's make a change and then go perform an update to it. So we're going to install this global app bundle here. And let us return to our dev instance, and we will make a very quick change to incident auto close, and we will perform a publish, and then we'll go deploy that to our test instance. So let's be like Chuck and just add a comment. Be like Chuck. Only comments here.
Comments are your friend.
So if we now do a publish, and we're going to increment our version. Oh no, we're going to do a bigger increment. That comment was worthy of a .1.
Probably not our policy, but okay. That was a major patch release.
Major patch. was a Chuck level comment.
I don't know about you,
So-
but somewhere in my career, I'm sure adding a comment's fixed a problem.
Oh, absolutely. And there's the old internet story of removing a comment broke the application. And so there was a new comment added. Please don't delete the above comment because we don't know why, but everything breaks if you do. So don't do that.
I've had comments that say, I don't know how it works. Don't touch it. I'll chop your fingers off.
So we now we have more than one version for this app in our application repository, and we denote that there is a new version here that it can upgrade to. So we've got our installed version, and then we have versions that we can move up to, and there could be multiple options in here if we had, multiple versions published, but we only have one. So let us go update our version with that. And one thing to note for both applications that your dev team makes and publishes to the application repository and ones you get from the store, the next step after that is very important, which is you should go to your upgrade history table. And we will look at just now this entry. So this is the entry for the upgrade from the version we were on of that application to the new version. So there are 3 script entries, and oh, look, there is one new script updated. There's no conflict, and so it just updated it. But we potentially could have had skip changes to review if the file had been changed. This is much more likely with a store app than with one of your own apps. But it's still possible with one of your own apps if someone went and changed, if they touched an application file in production, which they shouldn't be doing, but maybe they did for some reason. And so you could have skip files to review there as well. So this upgrade history is very important to review for store apps or apps that you're promoting from the application repository of your own, because you need to review those skipped records.
Andrew, can you do me a favor on the this target instance and go to that business rule? What was it, incident closed?
Absolutely, we can.
Well,
let's go to
I have
Studio. And let's switch to that app in Studio.
You can't, or you shouldn't be able to.
Incident auto.
Was this ever pushed with Git? Or was it only installed with app repo?
This was only installed with app repo.
Okay. Come on, load. What I found, I don't know if this is true for global apps, but what I found with scoped apps is if you use the app repo, it treats the target instance almost like it's sacred. It doesn't let you make changes. It says, this has been installed through the app repo. You are in production. You shouldn't be messing with this. Don't mess with it. If you've got changes, don't do it in production. So it makes the record read-only. If you do it through GitHub, you're effectively saying, I'm another developer instance, so I can make changes in production. So there's a risk element there, depending on which choice you use to move your changes through Git up to prod. You technically can, but there is a risk that somebody's going to change something. And now when you go to install again, it's going to say, hey, you want to stash changes? And you go, what? Who's making changes? It will show you, but you're going to have to resolve that. If you continue to do your deployments through the app repo, that's not a concern.
So I've got the business rule open here, and so I could make modifications to this business rule in not dev. And
It's
then
correct.
and then that would cause a skipped entry for the next version update from the app repo.
So we've got a differentiation between scope and how it handles global.
Well, there's a protection policy field on the like on the business rule to where you can set it to protected or read only. So if you use that field and set it to read only, then when you deploy it through the repo, it's no longer editable and in an installed state.
But
If you don't
I
set the
never have,
protection
and I think
policy, it should be editable no matter what.
I haven't done that, at least consciously, with any of my scoped files. But yet, when they end up in production through the app repo, they are read only.
It shouldn't be, but we can certainly take a look at that at some point. So we have now deployed a version to our test instance from the app repo. We've deployed source control changes through the app. We've deployed changes through source control. We've created branches. We've merged well, we talked about merging branches. We didn't actually do it. The next thing that we can talk about is how does this all tie together, and when should we use one of these over the other? Which came back to that question that someone asked earlier of when should I choose which of these to use? And the answer is, for me, my best answer right now is for development, I like to use source control until I'm ready to publish. So until I'm ready to, start the release process for the work I'm working on, source control is the way. So I will use branches and commits in source control up until the point that I'm ready to move code up the stack. I can still use source control to deploy to other dev instances if I'm in an environment where I have multiple dev instances. But if I'm ready to move something up the stack is when I use the application repository. And part of the reason for that is I want the apps to be in the installed state instead of in the in development state in non-development instances. And the process is just simply easier for my admins who are doing the promotion. So maybe I have a release manager who's not even a ServiceNow dev, who's managing our release process, and they can perform the installation of applications from this interface, my company applications, and do that drop down that we had and hit install. Like, this is a nice, easy interface versus telling someone to install from source control in Studio is a higher bar, right? So that's where I'm at for the differentiations between them. Can you use source control all the way up to prod? Yes. Can you use the application repository all in all of the instances? Mostly, yes. So that's how I separate them.
So you're saying for managing development across like multiple development instances, you would use source control for that. And when it's time to deploy your code to like a test in a prod environment, then you would use the app repo.
Yes. That was a great summary, Brad.
I agree.
So
while you were doing that description, I did a little research on what I just said. Looks like script includes default to the read-only protection policy. Everything else is open unless you explicitly set it.
Got it. So there's a default for script includes. Nice. That we've solved that nugget. So what we've shown so far today is all of those steps manually. But we have solutions for that. We're developers and we don't like manual things. At least
It's
this
our job to
developer doesn't.
automate.
So that means we have over here we should have, actually,
Call it
there's a
SN
rest.
CICD.
Oh, did you see it?
No, I was just, I think isn't it SN CICD? That's the
Yeah, it's
name
like
of-
the name. SNCICD.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, here's the API. And it was a REST API.
It was
I thought
REST.
it was. So there is a whole suite of APIs to manage this stuff for you via automation. And I am a big fan of these. So there is a whole suite of these that can do run a test suite, activate a plugin, install an application from an application repository, run a health scan, apply remote changes from a local instance from source control. It can switch branches. It can publish code changes to a connected application repository. And you can see some of this if you have App Engine Studio. So if you're on Quebec and you have App Engine Studio, there is actually a deployment request. Yes. So there is a table that manages the application deployment process for citizen developers who are using App Engine Studio, and it's backed by this deployment request table, which handles the approvals and automation of promotion. So it'll publish that citizen dev's app to the application repository and then move it up your pipeline, which will be to test and then to prod. But it doesn't need to be limited to just stuff from App Engine Studio. So that workshop, CCW 1856, that I had from last year's knowledge, has a deployment request table in it that does more than just App Engine Studio stuff. So this
And we have one baked here earlier.
Can manage, and this is just one example of how you can automate this. But something like this can manage your deployment process. And so you can set the values in here. You can even set most of this stuff in an automated fashion. And it can then, invoke the flows that I have backing this application to handle approvals. And then it can do things like commit your code to source control, publish it to the application repository, run ATF suites, and then conditionally on the success of those ATF suites, if they all pass, it can then deploy that version to the test instance and then run the ATF suites there, write those results back to this file, and then even perform other things like, oh, okay, well, everything's good to go. Let us deploy to prod. So let's take a moment and look at some of that. So let's switch over to that application. And this is just, again, this is just an example of what you could do with those CI/CD APIs. And all of those APIs also have either flow subflows or actions that you can use to invoke them from Flow Designer. So if we open Flow Designer, we have a flow here in this application that will, I think we have remote deploy from source control, I think is the one that we opened.
Nice.
And Mark calls out that we can also run instance scan through these APIs.
Yes, that was one of the options in that REST API, was to run instant scan, and we love instant scan. We
And the
had
cool
a couple
part,
of great episodes about that.
the cool part about them being REST APIs is that not only can we orchestrate them from within ServiceNow that you're showing, but if your deployment process uses, GitHub Actions or Jenkins, or I think we've got 4 different integrations that are already built that you can use to orchestrate, your deployments and everything. We actually have a blog post from, I think it was December, where there's a video embedded that shows GitHub Actions, managing this process.
Absolutely. So Flow, since I'm a ServiceNow developer, Flow was my go-to. But as you said, Brad, it could just as easily be a GitHub action-based deployment process because of those REST APIs and the plugins that ServiceNow has made for things like GitHub Actions. So let's quickly look at this flow and then wrap up. So this flow, uses that deployment request table, and it looks up any of my, so I've got a ATF suite that's related to my application. So it's going to go find those. It will run that suite. And then if it didn't succeed, it's going to update my record. But if it did exceed, it's going to update my record in a different way. And that update to that record will cause the next flow, which will actually perform the deploy from source control. So my process started with running ATF before I allowed it to deploy from source control. And you can stitch these together in whatever makes sense to you. Because of all of the subflows and actions that we've provided, you can create as simple or as complex of a release process that you want with all of these tools. So let's see one of them in action really quick. And then that will be our last thing. So if we go to take a look at things that were, which one do I want to run? Let's go to flows. Actually, I'm going to do deploy from app repo. Let's do that. So I'm going to test this flow against, we could do number 2, but let's see what's in number 2. We want to deploy this app to test. Let's do that. In order to do that, we need to remove it there because it was already there earlier today. I already tested this once today. Installed apps. While I'm doing this, one of the best things to do when you have a application that you create, so a scoped application, and you're going to use the application repository, is publish it right then. Empty shell, publish it, and promote it all the way up your stack. And the reason for that is, in case you perform a clone before you're ready to deploy the working version, you can run into issues if you do a clone back to your dev instance. In production didn't have that application. It won't be in the dev state, and that's really important to have for your applications, is you want them in the dev editable state. So promote that empty shell all the way up your stack to production is a good practice to invoke. So we're going to, from our dev instance, so we're going to take a look at the operations view of this flow. And you can see this flow is not very complicated because we've got a subflow that's doing most of our work for us. We feed it some inputs and it's ready to go. So it says installing application with scopes. That's one of those actions that's backed by that REST API we showed. And it didn't fail. So that means it completed. Awesome. So that means over here, we should, which app was it? You gotta know what victory looks like. 02 was shell game, this application scope. Let's, in our test instance, head over to sys store app, that list, and see if we have that scope installed. Hey, look at that. There's our
Nice.
There's our application installed. So with that, I will stop the screen share. And we will return to the video view. And so we went through a whole bunch of stuff there. That was the lightning round. All the things about global app bundles, application repositories, and source control, all bundled up into one 1 hour show. So I hope that was helpful. Are there any questions before we fully wrap?
The chat likes it.
That was also a nice little tip at the end there with the when you install an app, it installs into the sys_store_app table. When you have an app in development, it's just the sys_app table. And that's how the instance knows the difference between an installed app and an app that's in development.
Absolutely. And there's even the not installed app table too, which is sys remote app, is the apps that are not yet installed, but that are available to be installed. So those are 3 separate tables. And that is why it's very important for that earlier comment of the deploying all the way to prod before you do a clone for any of your applications. At least the first, you need at least that empty shell in prod so that when it installs in dev, it actually installs that application, and then you can change the version and it's still in the development mode. But if it's not there and you'll have to install it from the application repo, it won't be in development mode. So that's an important note. So you either need to promote it all the way to prod, that empty shell, or connect it to source control and install from source control to get it back into that dev state. And with that, I thank y'all for going on this journey with me to exploring all of the options, or at least many of the options around the application repository and source control. And there's a lot of automation that can be done that will suit your organization's needs, which is really nice because it's super flexible.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
And thanks everybody for watching. We will see you again. We will not be having a show next week or for the next couple of weeks. We've got CreatorCon content coming at you, so we want to make sure you focus on that. But we will see you later in May back here on Creator Toolbox. And Andrew's going to be back for our next Tech Now on May 25th, which is also a Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. Why don't you talk about that? Give yourself a little promo.
Debugging on ServiceNow. So I'm very excited. It will be the first time I'm joining Tech Now. So I'm looking forward to that. So come join us to talk about and see how to debug in ServiceNow.
Go get registered. devlink.sn/TN85.
85?
I forgot.
85.
85 reg. I'm sorry, I'm working on multiples at the same time, so it gets a little out of hand sometimes. So yeah, devlink.sn/TN85 reg to go get registered for that. That way you get the notifications and whatnot. You should be seeing an email, and I think we've got it in the newsletter as well. So stick with us, and we'll see you again real soon. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.